beautiful soul being. Welcome to the Connecting Soul Beings podcast, offering you, the animal lover, information, tips, and learning on soul-to-soul connection, animal communication, self-leadership, and all things spiritual. We will help you tune into the language of animals and the soul, inspiring you to gain a deep intuitive understanding of yourself and the animals. You become more connected, feelings of love and empowerment so that you experience harmony and joy. True soul-to-soul connection. Welcome, beautiful soul. Today we have the wonderful Amrit Sandhu from Australia with us. I am truly honored to introduce you to him. Amrit is a beautiful soul and he is a podcast host, international speaker and founder of the Inspired Evolution. He has been certified by Eckhart Tolle's School of Awakening. He is also a Mindvalley Master Certified Trainer for Australia and India. Amrit has traveled the world delivering keynotes, talks, seminars and workshops for the Inspired Evolution and also Mindvalley. Amrit has a huge love for helping people, and this stems from his own struggles with depression, which were triggered during his own personal awakening journey. Now today he shares the tools of meditation and his personal development journey, which has helped him profoundly on his own journey towards wholeness. Well, Amrit, it's really excited to have you here. I'm absolutely stoked and it's such an honor. I feel a little bit sort of overwhelmed as well because I've literally just started my podcasting. In podcasting.
Congratulations, though. Oh my God, what an exciting journey you're on.
Oh, it is very much so. So so we'll just take it, as it comes and we'll go with the flow sort of thing. And I think you and I both have that in us anyhow, which is really wonderful. But I'm sure that there's quite a few listeners that have not heard of you before. So I would love to hear from you a little bit more about your story to kick it off.
Sure. So when you say my story, are you looking for some of the background that informs what I do, or are we looking into what I offer in the world at the moment? What are we talking about?
Yeah, probably a little bit more about your background, how you got into mindfulness, meditation, and your beautiful company and podcast, Inspired Evolution, and what that's all about as well. Yeah, love it.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So the story, put a long story quite succinctly for your listeners, is basically coming out through high school into university, I struggled with depression for about 6 years, 6 to 7 years, so about 6 years. And the long story short of that was I basically found that the only thing, I discovered this when I was sitting I was diagnosed with depression when I was sitting opposite a psychotherapist in a doctor's office. And she basically said, you're depressed, you've got this, and these are the reasons why. And I was like, okay. And she basically gave me an option. She gave me pills. And through some sort of grace, the doctor that prescribed me to that psychotherapist, actually the psychotherapist only gave me pills. But the doctor who was in the same clinic that prescribed me the psychotherapist, she, in her infinite wisdom, gave me this breathing exercise. And at the time, I clearly remember, it just breathing exercise, I looked at the doctor and I was like, are you serious? Like, I've just been diagnosed by my psychotherapist now for having had depression for 6 years and all these symptoms and all this sort of stuff. And you're telling me to breathe. Like, this is something I do every day anyway. And you're telling me to breathe. Like, I was infuriated, let's just put it that way. And so I went straight to the pharmacy, fulfilled a prescription, got the pills, and took my first pill, and it was amazing, I have to say. I was on this euphoric high and I got so much done, like some people talk about the chemical imbalance. Once that was rectified, there was just so much vitality, so much, like dum, 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 dum. It was an amazing 8 hours. And as soon as it wore off, I crashed. And I didn't know too much about too many things at this point, but the one thing I got quite clear on as soon as I crashed was, I can't do this. I really can't do this. I'd been going to the gym for a while, so health was an important part of my life. But mental health was something I didn't really have many conversations around with anybody, to be honest. But the one thing I got really clear on was some part of me knew that I couldn't consistently take a pill, be normal, or be high and then kind of get what I needed to do done and then crash, and then take another pill and then go up and then crash. And then that was just something that I was not willing to engage in. But so I stopped taking the pills, but I never thought about the mindfulness exercise, the breathing exercise she gave me, right? So I basically just ended up in a situation, maybe about a week later, where I was in an environment that promoted a lot of anxiety for me. It was a simple environment. I was just walking down a corridor hall at university, but something triggered this intense anxiety. And I pulled out my phone, which I didn't realize this was a coping mechanism. Now I look back, and I used to call my friends, and as an extrovert, just speak to people. I used to consume my time by filling other people's energy into it just to sort of stay grounded. But I pulled out my phone, and on the back, by some sort of divine grace or, my own grace, there was the breathing exercise was sort of in the back cover of my phone, and I had a clear cover to my phone. And I was looking at this breathing exercise. So I just tried it, it was very simple. It's breathe in to the count of 1 and breathe out to the count of 2. Breathe in to the count of 3 and breathe out to the count of 4. Breathe in to the count of 5, out to 4, and then just keep going up and down, back and forward like that. And so I did this, and I can't even begin to articulate my amazement in the moment, right? Because I actually found myself calm. I actually found myself all the symptoms sort of easing. And it was profound, to put the least. It was oh, wow, this is actually working. And that moment I clearly remember, and it pretty much changed my life. So from there, I ended up, reading some more books on this, because then from there, this breathing, what is this? It was this profound experience that was really helping me in this really heavy place that I was in. And I started realizing, okay, so this breathing is actually mindfulness. And, read this book called The Happiness Trap, which is a great first read for those looking into mindfulness. And on the back of that, I started realizing that mindfulness is an aspect of meditation. And my father had been a meditator his whole life, but I always thought it was something for him. It was a spiritual practice. It was, it wasn't anything to do with me. But then from there, this whole practice around meditation and mindfulness started to just snowball and become its own thing. The journey around the Inspired Evolution is an interesting one. And so basically conducting all these interviews again and again with all these inspiring people, I've come to find that the journey of the, perhaps the wounded healer, you can call it that, is quite a profound archetype, and it plays out extremely commonly in society. So, and all that really means is that our biggest challenges, more often than not, will form your biggest gift. Mm-hmm. Right? So whatever it is that was your biggest challenge in life, if you can figure out how to work through that darkness or that aspect of whatever was your challenge, once you've built all the tools to get through that, it then becomes your responsibility to share that with other people that are going through their journey. And that will determine, how effectively you conduct yourself in the world. And so my biggest challenge was that depression. And so meditation got me through that. And through the episodes and realizing that there are all these people that have had all these challenges, and whatever their challenges were that they got through, supported their biggest offering. It wasn't even you come from a place okay, this is my challenge, so this is what I'm going to offer. It just so happens that you had your challenge, and what supported you through your challenge, for me, it was meditation, gave me so much. It just gave me so much as a tool, as a thing, that I couldn't help but just walk around and just be hey, have you meditation, hey, meditation. And I was talking about this with my friends all the time. My friends were becoming meditators. People were adapting onto it. And it just became a thing that organically grew. It just filled my own cup up so much that it organically just got to that way. And then it was okay, you can support not just individuals doing this, that are your friends, but then individuals one-on-one that, can pay for this as a service.
Yeah.
And that turned into construction companies, because I used to work in construction, and I realized like how toxic that environment can be, and how much need there is, for this kind of work, and no one else is doing it basically. So being the only one that is doing it is kind of empowering, but also like it has its challenges. And so in and around that, working with more construction companies has led to working with other companies. So that's how corporate mindfulness has kind of been built out for an Inspired Evolution. Everything's been very organic. It's just a matter of, getting in touch with what was my challenge, and then having to work through that, and realize that I'm not alone in my challenge. Everybody else is going through certain things as well, and just supporting them into the best of my ability that I can with the tools that I have.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can really hear the passion that you have for it as well in that. And I just want to honor you to go through that process, and actually acknowledging that, okay, let's go the medication route, and then, test out the breathing as well at the same time. And then it evolves in this beautiful service that you provide the world, not just yourself in that sense as well. And that's really beautiful. Now, in terms of what you say about the corporate industry and the construction, I've got this vision of all these tough guys, working with you and meditating. And I can sort of appreciate that can be a bit of a challenge, because people in that environment may not have been exposed to meditation and mindfulness and being aware, let alone a little bit more about the spirituality as well that comes with that. How do you get people, around that? What is your process?
Sweet. So it depends how deep you want to go in this conversation. So if you want to get really deep, which, I know you, and so let's just go all the way. I grew up in hospitality, right? And so if you look back into your life, we all have these different, like everybody has different assets, everybody has a certain gift or a quality that is uniquely theirs. For some people, it may be, that they're amazing speakers. For some people, it may be that they're amazing listeners, but we're not all the same. For something that is, I grew up in hospitality. And so from a very early age, I was dealing with a range of people all the time, because I just grew up in a restaurant. My parents had a restaurant. So I was dealing with people that, were CEOs, but my father would feed homeless people as well, So like it was all this range of people that I'd consistently engage with and connect with. So I bring that in because that is kind of where all this mindfulness work comes into. And I kind of see, the value that I bring is I'm not necessarily the meditation teacher. Like we can totally sit down and have a conversation, and I can put on a voice and guide you into a meditation, but for sure. But at the same time, there's also I get to be the meditation teacher that goes out to construction sites and be like, today, some days your head is going to fuck with you, and I get to swear through meditation training. But that's because I can meet them where they're at and, relate with them. And not only because it's like I'm putting it on, I've been where they've been, like I've actually engaged and been in that situation. So I found that that's kind of been the groove that has supported me to do this work, spreading it further and further. Now, that was a little important piece about recognizing like what it is that, is uniquely your kind of code. For me, range is a really important thing. Like, trying to connect with different people across a different range is something that I love doing. It's just inbuilt in me. But everybody has their own thing. So for construction workers specifically, you would think, corporate, a lot of people are very, very savvy these days. The internet is promoting a lot of mindfulness all the time. People are switched onto the benefits of mindfulness. They want to know how to do it and how to most effectively do it. The conversation that often comes up in corporate environments is minimum effective dose, like I can't sit for an hour and a half, or I can't sit, like 5 minutes doesn't really get me there. And there's a whole myriad of conversations we can have around that. But on construction sites, people often ask the same question, which you just did, which is, hey, like, these construction workers, they're wearing their steel cap boots, they're burly, they're hard, and like what goes on? Like, how do you even break through to these people? Yeah. And the reality of the situation is, those are everyone's projections. These are absolutely human beings, just like everybody else. And if anything, they haven't had the opportunity to share what's been on their heart, on their mind, because nobody listens. So the minute someone like me rocks up and it's like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, that's odd, mate. Like, but I dress like them. I talk like them. I've been one of them. They know that I've worked in the industry. I still work in some capacity to the industry. And so, as a consultant, so this is still going on. So they kind of trust and let me in. And there's this amazing moment, and generally this is how I like to do it is, because we can talk about mindfulness all day, but until you kind of have a meditation, you don't really know what we're talking about, right? And so my favorite moment is going out to a new construction company, specifically construction, because it's amazing, and then guiding them into a meditation, and they kind of trust you going through into the process. And then as soon as you try and pull them out of the meditation, this anxiety, like you can feel the anxiety fill back into the space. And it's like, where did I just go? You know, is the connective thought that is going on, because these people have never checked in, you know, they've never gone inwards, never spent some time. And it's like, wow, that was amazing. But where was I just then? You know, it was like, mate, inside, you know, there's a whole world inside you. And that opens up to this whole other thing, you know. So mindfulness has then led into me having to sort of acquire tools and become more supportive as a life coach, so I can support people on their journeys, because people in construction, you know, there is unresolved anger issues, there is unresolved things around shame, you know, there can be a lot of bullying and all these things that people have to interface in this environment, because there's so many people with unresolved emotional stuff they didn't have the opportunity to speak about, because they didn't have awareness around, because they didn't have the awareness, because they didn't spend any time going inside or asking any questions, or there was no one there to interface to ask the questions to. And so all of a sudden you've got, you know, someone like myself rocking up, which is like, hey, you know, let's just become aware. And if there's anything you want to talk about, let's talk about it. This interesting space opens up and people start really shedding their layers. And the outer layer, which we all see, which is the facade, which is like, yeah, burly construction worker, is like millimeters deep. It is so thin. It is such a thin veil that as soon as you get in, these people have so much going on, sometimes more than, you know, your average person. And they're just waiting to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's wonderful, you know, because what you said as well, that you understand where they're at because you've experienced it yourself and you know their industry so well. And yeah, it's absolutely to do with what we perceive it to be, because we see them, you know, working hard and they're in there. And so to have you there to really bring it out in them, to actually go inwards, you know, that's really amazing. The thing that came up for me when you were talking about, you bring them into that state of meditation where they can look inwards. And then you mentioned when they come out, the anxiety creeps back in. How do you manage that doesn't happen?
Right. So that is something that is naturally going to happen, right? So especially initially when you're starting out on this journey, you're going to have moments where you're consistently, you know, feeling stress, and meditation might be something that you're using as a reactive tool to your stress. And oftentimes when you're most stressed, you forget that you have meditation as a tool. Right. And, you know, I'm still guilty of this for some days. You know, it's like working around and there's so much happening. And it's like, now's the time I need to pause for 10 minutes. And that awareness will even drop in, but I still won't have the opportunity to drop in for 10 minutes, you know. So in and around that there's a lot to that. But fundamentally, the anxiety and the stress, I humbly believe, are an amazing gift. So a lot of people have this idea that stress is negative, stress is bad. Stress is, in my humble opinion, trying to do the work for you that I would like to do for you, you know, which is asking you to change and come back into balance, you know. That's all stress is doing for you. Stress is here and it's like, hey, like it's your body going, hey, I'm sending a chemical response. Can you slow down? Can you slow down? Like I'm not built for this. I'm not meant to do this. Okay, put in another coffee. Damn. Okay, here I go again. You know, and it's like, all right, keep pushing. After a while, that stress response gets so high that you end up sick. Yeah, something like that, right? You're not aware of where you're at. So stress is something that, you know, is doing an amazing job for you. So that anxiety is much the same, right? That anxiety is letting you know that you're not present. That's all anxiety is, right? So anxiety and depression are very closely linked. I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, but basically meditation brings you back into the present moment, right? Mindfulness especially is a type of meditation that brings you back into the present moment. Yeah. But as soon as you're anxious, basically what's happened is your thoughts are drifting in towards the future. You've got thoughts that are wired towards the future. Yeah? And as soon as you're feeling depressed, basically what's happened is your thoughts have started weaving towards the past. You've started thinking about something in the past. And that's at its fundamental level, that's what's happening. Now, you can say, oh, maybe we should just spend the whole time in the present. And yes and no. You know, I'm currently being coached by Eckhart Tolle, and he's written The Power of Now. And even in that, you know, we're talking a lot about purpose, and purpose is about, you know, why are you here to do what you're going to do for the rest of your life? So, you know, that's a deep conversation about the future.
Yes.
And so even, there's space always for the future, and there is space to reflect on the past. These are evolutionary tools. We can't avoid these, because if we never looked back at our mistakes, we couldn't build a better tomorrow, and if we don't plan for the future, we're basically stuck in the present moment. We don't have a tomorrow that, looks like air-conditioned apartments and houses and all this sort of stuff. Like, how are we going to make it through tomorrow? So the world we live in has been really blessed by our thinking, but at the same time, all this thinking left unchecked, this is a common thing which you'll hear meditators say, is that, your mind is a tool, but generally what ends up happening is you think you are your mind, you identify with your mind, and your mind runs everything. And left unchecked, I found this true for myself. Like, I'm a classic example. I'm an engineer by qualification. So I'm Mr. Hard Hat, Spanner. I'm Mr. Fix It. Yeah. So I look to fix everything. But early in my meditation practice, I came to identify that my mind is so good at fixing problems that even if it didn't have a problem to fix, it would start looking for problems to fix. Yeah, because I was so solution oriented as an individual. It's like, okay, this is a problem, let me fix that. This is a problem, let me fix that. But it's always identifying problems in the past, in the future. This didn't work out, or this could be better. But it's like, hey, everything is kind of perfect in the present moment. It always is. Take this present moment for an example. There's you and I sitting here. I'm in a comfortable home. You've got a beautiful background. I'm in this amazing space having a really yummy conversation with an individual. Yeah. And the present moment is always a blessing. It's always a gift. There's blood pumping in my body. I get to breathe. I get to engage. I get to think. It's always, every time you come back into the present moment, you'll find something to be grateful for. It's amazing. So in and around that, coming back into the present moment is the work of mindfulness and meditation. So the anxiety is pulling you into the future, right? And so it's a gift, because what it's doing is actually going, hey, do you notice how your thoughts pull you towards the future? And as soon as you start getting the stress response of anxiety, which is shortness of breath, your body starts compressing. It's like, I'm not in the present moment. So now's an opportunity for you to identify that. Your body's communicating to you like, hey, come back. And then you can settle back in and start breathing again.
Yeah.
And come back to the present moment. But as with anything, it takes cultivation, so the more times you identify, and there's many different stages to being an adept meditator, and what works for you at certain stages doesn't necessarily work for you at other stages, right? And that's why I have, such a personalized one-on-one meditation coaching practice for people. And so you start off, initially it's like these massive responses, and then it's like, okay, how do I curb these massive stress and anxiety responses that I have? And then down the track, once you've been meditating for 4 or 5 years, you find that you sit in meditation and it's extremely boring, and it's like, what is going on? How do I move through the boredom of my practice? Yeah. And in that, it's like really connecting to certain elements of your practice. So, there's all these various myriad of stages of the journey that, they come up. And I have to say, all the good things in life, music, meditation, they're endless, these journeys, so it's I think that has some sort of intimidation factor to it as well. People kind of don't see an outcome to meditation. It's like, I'm taking it on, I'll de-stress in like 8 weeks, and that's why the 8-week course for mindfulness, introduction to mindfulness, sells really well, and it I can't deny it. It sets you up for a practice of mindfulness, and I'm glad that I offer it. But at the same time, it's the beginning, like at the end of the 8 weeks, you're not done. You've just started, on the back of that, your lifelong journey with mindfulness and meditation begins.
Yes. Oh, I so agree with that, for sure. Yeah, I love what you're saying around the anxiety and the stress. It's a really wonderful way to look at that. And I think it's very relevant in this day and age, because, as you said, so many people are experiencing that at some stage in their life. I don't think anyone is immune to experiencing some level of anxiety or stress. But it's really wonderful to learn from you that it has to do with looking into the future, and then, the depression takes you back into the past, and we can get stuck in those two elements. So to actually bring that back with that meditative mindfulness exercise to become more present, that really helps to lift that up. And from that moment, we can really become more aware and really centered to see, okay, what is the next small step that I can take in a much more relaxed way.
And I feel like, a big part of my one-on-one coaching comes back to this phrase, is like, did you really stand a chance? I'm not trying to absolve anybody from their responsibility, But like I said, your brain is chemically wired to look back into the past and into the future. It's a natural evolutionary process tool. It's very hard to, if you weren't educated on how to fight that, or like manage that, or work with that, or be at peace with that, how to navigate your process through that. But the reality is it's not difficult. Yeah. Like if you have the tools, it's very straightforward. Yes. Like if I asked you what's 2 + 2, it's 4, but you were educated on that. You just weren't educated in mindfulness. Right?
No.
Something that is now rampantly shifting across the planet. Mindfulness is being introduced into like school curriculums at a very early age, because now they're seeing how many emotional disorders we now have as adults.
Yes, and it's beautiful that children take it on board so well.
Oh.
I've seen a few articles and videos on that as well. It's just wonderful. They just do it, and it's so easy for them to just get into that space too, because children don't have the exposure that we have as adults, and they don't necessarily filter through things either. They just take it as it is in that moment. And it's beautiful for them to learn this practice at such an early age, because that will set them up for the rest of their lives. That's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Oh God, I love all this stuff. It's really cool. Now, personally, I mean, you being an engineer, me coming from a finance background and having worked in corporate finance for so many years myself, the challenge for me personally was around the meditation was that it wasn't necessarily tangible. And I didn't have a practicality around that. There was no, okay, we're going to do this really, with an outcome per se, which I have learned over the years that I've been doing this. You don't always meditate with an outcome in mind. It is really to get yourself centered, grounded. And for me personally, it gives me an element of peace, and it gives me an element of trust in myself. And also for me, the meditation gives me a pure connection to myself, but also everything that's around me. And having to accept that it is what it is and not to analyze that process was a big journey for me, because that held me back at times from truly connecting to myself and going inwards. What is your experience in that, going into the corporate world to, have people implement that at a practical level is probably where I'm going with this.
Sure. Can I ask you just a question, is like, how long did it take for all those, like knowing that meditation was centering you, was helping you connect to, yourself? How long did that take for that to settle in?
Oh goodness, quite a while. Yeah. And sometimes it still comes back.
Yeah. So it's a process that takes a while for you to reap the benefit, like to reap the awareness of the benefits from. Now, for corporates, like it's a different climate. Again, a finance company is very different to a construction company, which is very different to an IT company. I've worked with various different companies, and marketing people, they're all into the buzz of mindfulness, but really bringing awareness into their system is it's quite a shocking experience actually. But yeah, so, there's all this sort of diverse, like everybody comes with their own perspective and lens on it. But fundamentally, like a really simple meditation on an exercise is gratitude, right? So if I ask you to right now think about 3 things you're grateful for, and really feel those moments that you're grateful for. It could have been a holiday you went on. It could have been a dog that exists in your life. It could have been a human being that really matters to you. Just gratitude for 3 things, 3 moments, when you're really filling up with that emotion, and I ask you to try and think of something that you're like really angry about, but still feel their gratitude for those. You can't do that, right? You can't hold 2 opposing emotions at the same time, right? And so you start becoming aware of like, okay, this is really a thing, where I focus my attention can actually have an impact on my state. And we all know that where our state is kind of has a ripple effect onto how we conduct ourselves. When I'm in a good mood, I have good meetings. If when I'm in a shit mood, I have shit meetings. You know what I mean? And that everybody can identify with that. And then, there's a blessing at the moment, which is why I feel really grateful to be, a mindfulness instructor and a meditation teacher and, a life coach in 2019 of all times to be alive. There is so much hard science coming at all of this now, like looking into like what parts of your, okay, so just to give people an idea of the birthplace of neuroscience, right? So when we started with neuroscience, basically what happened was initially your amygdala, no one, like there was no space for us to, there was no model where we thought that the amygdala could be down regulated. The amygdala is the deepest, corest part of your mind, right? It's what some people call the reptilian mind, right? It's where your fight and flight response reside, yeah? And that was believed to be so innate to who you are. It's just you're in fight or flight. You just jump into that. You just drop into that moment, you know? There's no ability to, there's no way to really down regulate that part of your brain. And why would you want to? It's responsible for safety first and foremost. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And so when you get into that space, they found that, you know, they geared up this meditator and sent him into an MRI scan, and his amygdala was down regulating. And they were like, what's going on for you? Like, how are you doing this? And his response was basically, I'm anxious about the scan, so I'm just meditating. And from there, they realized, wow, meditation can actually impact your amygdala, which is like the corest part of your brain. To this date, we didn't think that it could be impacted, right? Through such a simple thing as breathing and connecting, right? And so from there, the whole space for neuroscience has been birthed, yeah? So that gives meditation a really amazing gateway into like the exploration of neuroscience and then neuroplasticity and everything that you focus on, you know, and it brings a wonderful conversation around, you know, ancient practices such as mantras, yeah? Which I never introduce in a corporate training, right? But they do exist in my own personal training, right? So the use of a mantra, when you're consistently focusing on a certain thing, we know with enough NLP behind you that if you're consistently focusing on enough of a certain thing, you are priming yourself for the awareness for that to basically happen. And then if you want to get super hippie about it, the law of attraction, the law of manifestation, you start seeing the world in the way that you basically condition yourself to see it. And then that stuff starts coming through. But that's all neuroplasticity really, right? Because you're basically firing neurons in your brain to see things a certain way. Like red car, red car, red car, red car, red car, red car, red car. If I keep saying that, when you leave the office, you're going to go out, you're going to pay more attention to red car because someone triggered you into thinking about a red car. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. So when you then implement that every single day, because also people say, and this is what I learned from my clients as well, oh, but I didn't have time for that. I didn't have time for that. You touched on that earlier on as well.
So yeah, so the practice, okay, so implementable tools, right? So mindfulness doesn't necessarily have to look like what everybody initially conceives it to look like, right? It's not this like meditation. There are many different types of meditations, right? Meditation is a whole world into itself, you know? Yeah. And so mindfulness is like a type of meditation. It's where you're engaged in the present moment and you're fully consumed through your senses, vividly, richly into the moment at hand. Yeah. And so you can be mindful eating a sultana, right? You grab a sultana, put it in your mouth, don't chew it. Yeah, immediately you want to chew it. But like just noticing that response, like I put something in my mouth, immediately I chew and I swallow and it's job done. But like actually just put it on your tongue. Take a moment to salivate. You start noticing what goes on in your mouth, the urge that's coming from your, like, you know, from the bottom of your belly, which is like, whoa, like I just want to eat, you know? And it's like, wow, you know, how consciously do I consume? You know, and how much do I not? And there's all these like narratives that come up that, again, just being present with the sensation of what is. In the workplace, one that works really well is look up. You're always down on your computer, looking down. You're always talking to people. But there are shelves in most offices and there are boxes and all this stuff overhead, but we never stop to look at it. Just take a moment to look up. You just, for a second, became more mindful of your environment.
Yeah.
That took less than 2 seconds. You're becoming more mindful. Yeah. And so again and again, like with mindfulness, what I personally like to try and get everyone to is to exercising more and more moments of mindfulness rather than, you know, especially in the workplace, because you can have a morning meditation practice, which is, you know, nothing would have helped me through my depression more than basically my morning meditation practice. And it's completely changed my life and I cannot advocate anything more than that. But moments of mindfulness throughout the day are a complete game changer. You know, just taking a moment to pause and breathe. Just taking a moment to pause and breathe. And for some people, it doesn't make sense to just, I don't remember to breathe. Okay, set an intention. Set an intention for your day. It's like, okay, so today my mission is to be kind to people, right? That could just be a simple intention. Like, I have an intention for kindness, right? And then you have moments in your day where you're like not kind. It's like, okay, cool, just check in, pause, check in with your intention. When you're doing that, you're breathing, and then you carry forward, right? So there's all these different ways to introduce mindfulness into your day, trying to implement more gratitude into your day.
Yeah.
Super straightforward. Now they're doing studies around gratitude in the workplace. I'm surprised that you need studies around gratitude in the workplace, right? But they're doing this, right? So when you think about it, to be grateful to someone, you've just got to be that little bit more present to be like, that was really nice. Thank you for doing that. That was a moment of mindfulness, whether you like it or not. You were mindful of whatever energy went into that moment to occur the way that it did, for someone to give you something that you were grateful for. So personally, I like to set people up with basically a power pause, in the middle of your day, right? So like consistently just checking in at certain points and going, this is my moment of pausing. And it's a powerful pause, right? So you set yourself up and just check in with your breath. Now, in and around that, I like to recommend, and again, everybody's different, right? But if we can, for your listeners, easiest place to go, power pause throughout the day and take 7 deep breaths. Again, I'm an engineer, so I look at the science. 6 deep breaths of your diaphragm expanding and slowing, expanding and contracting. Slows down your breath, right? But it also drops you from your sympathetic to your parasympathetic nervous system. 6 deep breaths is all it takes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I always say 7 because 7's a good number. It's easy to remember. It's the answer to everything in high school. When you're like, what's the answer to that? I don't know, 7. And so there's one for fix and it's one for luck, right? So if you can take 7 deep breaths, 7 really deep breaths in a moment, and that moment, it doesn't have to, that takes less than 30 seconds. That shifts your biochemistry, that shifts your awareness, that shifts your response. You go from being more reactive to having actually a response. Everything shifts. And so if you can have those moments throughout your day, you're in with a win, and then if you package something like that in with, a morning meditation practice and an evening meditation practice, you're basically, I kind of see it as becoming superhuman, especially in a world which is filled with so much noise, so much response, so much information always coming at you. Just being, breathing and centered and connected to your biology, when there's so many things that are calling us to disconnect from our biology, it's really, it makes you superhuman. You're just super present. So especially again, while I'm just on this topic, morning practice, people see someone sitting for 30 minutes. When you and I first start working together on a meditation practice, I ask you firstly, how long can you sit for still?
Okay.
And people go 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, cool. Your morning practice is 2.5 minutes. And they're like, what? That's not meditation. And I'm like, if you can keep your thoughts on just your breath for 2.5 minutes straight, mate, that's amazing.
Yes.
Without having other thoughts creep in and just staying engaged with your breath for 2.5 minutes, that's a solid meditation. And then even in that, they're like, yeah, my thoughts keep drifting. And I'm like, yeah, that's 2.5 minutes. Yeah. Trying to do that for 20 minutes when you just start is like career suicide. Why? Because you're just going to think this thing really sucks. I can't consistently stay on my breath. Of course you can't. You set yourself up for 20 minutes. When you learn to run, you don't just go, okay, I'm going to run a marathon. No, you run around the block a couple of times and go, okay, these shoes maybe are good for me to run in. And then you start running 3Ks, 5Ks, the same way. Right? Mm-hmm. So how far are you comfortable running? From here to, 2 kilometers. All right, cool. Let's start with just making your exercise regime a kilometer then. That's exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with mindfulness and meditation, it's all right, how long can you meditate for in the morning? 5 minutes. Let's do it 2.5. Plus all the behavioral psychology stuff that I understand as well. Once you say 5 minutes and then it's only 2.5, all the excuses kind of evaporate. It's like, that's no time. And then for me, fundamentally, a big part of helping you meditate is also building a habit, right? And once you're in the habit, it's harder to break out, but it takes 2 months and just a little bit to build a habit, right? Which sounds like a long time, but in the grand scheme of your life is nothing. So right now, not meditating feels weirder than meditating, right? So it's like when I miss a meditation, it's like, oh, I've gone against the grain. Whereas for most people, it's like, oh, it was so nice I had a meditation. You know, it's like this interesting dance that happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's really interesting because when you say 2.5 minutes, it's funny because it actually reminds me because people sometimes tell me, "Oh, why don't you just take a bath and relax?" To me, that's a waste of time. I sit in the bath for 2 minutes going, okay, what am I doing here? I'm going to hop out. However, I can sit in meditation for a long time. That's a completely different experience. Whereas other people feel if they have that bath, for them, that's already a type of meditation. Right. And I love the fact that you take it step by step for people as well, because what went through my mind when we were talking about that, if I was told straight off the bat, you need to sit down for half an hour with your legs crossed and go for 30 minutes, and I can only do it for 5, then I would see that as an imperfection and a failure because I haven't done it for 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, and on that note of like imperfections and failures, and you've touched on something really important here, which is, my fundamental belief is that there's 7.6 billion people on the planet. Yeah. So so the key thing, and this is just human beings, this is not including the animals, not including the trees, not including all life, right? Just human beings. There are 7.6 billion people here, okay? So I personally believe that we are all the universe looking in on ourselves. That's one of my corest, deepest philosophies, right? So in that way, you are a lens on the universe. Meditation is purely a practice of observation, right? So my meditation practice is never going to look like yours because you're a different observation point in on the universe. So because there's 7.6 billion people, there's at least 7.6 billion different meditations occurring at any given time. It's just how present are you in that state of observation to your experience of life, right? So there are so many different ways to meditate. I literally say there's 7.6 billion people, there's at least 7.6 billion ways to meditate because that's the nature of the universe. We're all the universe looking in on ourselves.
Yes.
So in and around that, it's a massive challenge. And a lot of the people I end up with being like, as my clients, it's like, I've started this meditation practice. It didn't work. What is next? Like, how do I actually make this work? I know there are benefits hidden in meditation waiting for me, but my practice doesn't work. It's like, what does your practice look like? And it's like, it's this. And it's like, that isn't you in any way. Some people, walking meditation is amazing. They love to just go walk and feel their entire feet and each and every step. Now, so some people, that's not meditation.
No.
Right? For you, a bath isn't meditation. For someone, a bath is a meditation.
Yeah.
For some people, gardening is a meditation. So it's like this whole thing, like, where is it that your flow is found?
Yeah. Oh, I so agree with that. And it's also different moments in your life. It sort of allows for a different type of meditation as well. Because I've experienced that too. Sometimes I feel, okay, I can actually sit in meditation quietly in my spiritual corner at home. Whereas other times I'm walking out with my dog and I'm in nature and then I'm meditating all of a sudden. And it's, whatever you need as well. And to allow that to be creative and have fun with that too, to explore what it is for you that really resonates in that process. And that makes it fun, and it gives a bit of variety in it too. So it's not like a chore.
Well, that's the biggest thing that, especially working with Eckhart Tolle at the moment, it's like every moment is an opportunity for you to drop into the moment. So whether you're walking the dog, whether you're in the bath, whether you're sitting in your meditation seat, whether I'm sitting in this conversation with you, there's always that opportunity to pause and really sink it all in, like soak it all in. And just sink into it and soak it all in and sink into it deeper and soak it all in. And that's just, the more you do that, the better you get at it, and just consistently walking that, like presence again and again and again, to the point where you're more present than you are not, because you've spent so much time. But again, it's like anything, it's the art of cultivation. The more you've got to do it more and more. I'm acutely aware that a lot of the work that I do with corporates after speaking on mindfulness and meditation, focus is a big conversation point. So I'll consciously have to be like, okay, I know I need to use social media, but at the same time, I need to use it in a very sort of controlled response, because if I'm not consciously working with social media, I'm using it just like everybody else. And everybody else is very qualified in giving a talk on distraction because they're spending a lot of time talking distracted, right? But I'm trying to cultivate focus in my life so that I can help people focus through meditation and mindfulness. But it's like all these things, all these subtle nuances that you start observing, where your energy is going, what you're doing, what you're invested in. What is it that you're cultivating? Are you cultivating presence? Then that becomes, part of who you become and what you offer.
I love that. What are you cultivating? That's awesome. Yeah, fantastic. Wow, amazing stuff. Thank you so much. That's absolutely wonderful. Is there anything else that you feel you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking such a open question. So fundamentally, if I could, and this is my truth, through the years of meditation, through everything, my life, what I feel like my message is here is to basically just share the simple fact that, your health and your purpose are the same thing. Yeah. And so a lot of us have it like are wary of our health. A lot of us are like, I should be going to the gym, I should be doing this, or I should be eating this, or green smoothies, or 6-pack abs, or surfing, or whatever it looks like for you, right? Mm-hmm. But we all at some point know that our health is fundamental to the experience of life. And the easiest way for that to drop in is like when you don't have health. Like normally, we're like a lot of people are out running after money, but they're not running after chasing their health. Mm-hmm. As soon as their health breaks down, money is money, but health, they're broken down, right? So then they start going, oh, health is actually fundamental. Yeah. But the question why, or why am I here, is not as fundamental to people as what health is for some reason, right? Mm-hmm. Which I understand, it's an existential question. Why do you need to ask that? But the reality is, when you come back to the fact that, if we can get on board with the idea that, okay, I am the universe. Yeah, like I came from this universe. Like I was birthed out of this reality and this experience of what is, into this universe. So I am the universe looking in on myself. Yeah. So in and around that, I am here. Why am I here? Mm. Right? What is the purpose of me being here? Now, when you find that when you find your flow, like there are certain points which you find flow, right? And flow is a whole science in itself. It's a whole nother podcast conversation in itself. But I believe you drop into moments of flow, right? Deep, like where things they're rich, they're effortless. You experience timelessness, right? Spaciousness, stillness. Like it's all this amazingness that comes from being in flow because you're doing what you were here to do. Mm-hmm. And you see some people, they have so much vitality doing the most amazing things in their life because they've figured out what it is that they were here to do. They experience vitality. Hidden in the word vitality is vital. What is it that is vital to creation that you were put here to do? Right? And that gives you your vitality. When you're vital to existence, you experience vitality. If you're not vital, you start to decay and nature goes, hey, I tried to get you to do this thing, but let me reclaim you so I can get the carbon molecules back and turn you into the next thing, right? So in and around that, your health and your purpose are the same thing. So when you're actually living the life that you were meant to live, you will experience, hands down, without a question, vitality, joy, abundance like you've never experienced it before. Mm. They're the same thing. Health is your purpose and your purpose is your health. And for a while I was walking around going, this is a whole philosophy of mine and mine alone. And maybe I was just born into an Indian culture and, there's some sort of roots in that or something. But this is actually the core tenet of Ayurveda, it turns out. And I've recently just discovered this about 18 months ago now. That basically what it is Ayurveda is holistic wellness, right? From Vedic science, which is thousands and thousands of years old. But at its core, Ayurveda is here to facilitate your dharma. And your dharma is the way you walk and live in your life. What is your offering to life? Mm. So your health is here to support you to offer your gift to humanity and live the life that you are here to live. Right? So living the life that you are here to live is your fundamental priority. And your health falls in line after that because you're doing what you're meant to be doing. Mm. Mm. So health and purpose are the same thing. And it's really, really important to connect with that. And so, a lot of what we talk about, right, is mental health awareness, and we talk about meditation. But the reality is you become self-aware. and you become self-aware, you start realizing what your job is doing to you or not doing for you, right? It's like, okay, my job is really good for me because it does this, this, or this. Or my job is not doing this for me and it does this, 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 and this, right? But once you have that awareness, now you have the opportunity to shift and recalibrate into your higher purpose, right? And so that's where your mental health kicks into like, I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. I'm satisfied. I have fulfillment. I'm more suited towards. So for me, I was an engineer, right? And so for me, I love to speak, and I love speaking and communication, basically, right? So whether I'm speaking on stage, around the world, or whether I'm in a podcast with you, as long as I know now through my awareness that communication is like a key touchwood thing for me, right? And I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a big part of what I fundamentally believe I'm here to do. Plus sharing this message. As you can see, I can rant and rumble on this message as much as I want, and I'll continue to not run out of information about it because it's what I'm here to do. My natural curiosity points all lead into that.
Yeah.
Right? So in and around that, I found that an energy comes to that naturally because I can't avoid it because it's what I was here to do. So that awareness of the self, which comes from meditation, is like actually the good stuff. Yeah, once you start becoming self-aware, you start experiencing, the opportunity to course correct yourself into self-love. And once you start loving yourself, life becomes this really amazing, amazing place to really like engage with and create from, and it's all there.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. You are such a wise and beautiful soul. It's just, I can continuously listen to you. It's just amazing stuff.
Well, I love to talk, so you're lucky. Oh. No, I'm kidding.
No, truly. I mean, it's always an honor to be in your presence, and you have such a wealth of information and such a beautiful heart that what you do is so powerful. And everyone needs to learn this. Everyone needs to tap into that. And the fact that you touched on health is purpose and purpose is your health, you couldn't have said that much better because that encompasses everything that you and I both do as well, and it's all driven, in that space. So yeah, amazing stuff. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your blessings. It's such a treat and a privilege to be here. And yeah, I'm really excited for your podcast. I just I love your energy, and I know that, podcasting for me has been a complete life-changing journey. And just knowing that, the podcast in a big way is just an extension of my own energy that I get to share with the world, and it gets received and, shared back. And just the mirror that comes from that is so profound and such a blessing. I'm just glad that your energy has the opportunity to spread further through podcasting because the world needs more of that. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing and having me on today for sure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Now, one more question. How can people find you, get in touch with you, work with you?
Awesome. So just a real point I'm going to make here quite abundantly is connection is what is like my highest value. So if anything comes up at any point, you want to have a chat, don't hesitate to connect. Yeah, like I absolutely value it. It may take some time for me to get back to you, but at the moment, I will get back to you. So the best place to do that at the moment is Facebook Messenger, just because I'm personally on that most of the time. So if you want to add me on Facebook, it's purely Amrit Sandhu, Amrit Sandhu. There's a page which you can like, and the page will I can send you responses through the page. The Inspired Evolution also has a Facebook page which you can connect to, but that's like the whole Inspired Evolution. So if you want to connect to me personally, find me on Facebook, Amrit Sandhu. Alternatively, send me an email, Amrit, Amrit, at inspiredevolution.org. So Amrit at inspired with a D, inspiredevolution.org. And yeah, there's a website there at inspiredevolution.org. You can find me there. But if you really want to connect, have a chat, something came up for you in this conversation or something, you feel like needs addressing or whatever, or you just expressing your gratitude or some point of difference, by all means, get in touch with me on Facebook. And yeah, that's always really easy to connect there.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I'll put all those links up on the page as well, so it's easy for people to just click through.
Awesome.
But thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Wow. I'm inspired again to be even more conscious in my mindfulness in meditation. And I just wish everybody a wonderful day and a wonderful evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. And Amrit, thank you again so much. I'm sure you've inspired so many people to really get into this, because it is immensely important. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Such a blessing.
Thank you so much for listening to yet another inspiring, high vibration episode of Connecting Soul Beings podcast. I truly love receiving your comments, stories, and feedback. Keep connecting, as they are truly inspiring. The easiest way to connect with me is via my website www.biancadereus.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Bianca de Reus. If you love our community and this podcast, you can help us by sharing and liking the show via Pippa, YouTube, iTunes, and the website. And if you feel that Connecting Soul Beings and myself can help you connect to yourself and the animals, then hop on over to www.biancadereus.com and find out how we can truly connect and help you along. Thank you again so much. Stay connected with love and grace.